In 2020, the COVID-19 epidemic has impacted the economies of all countries in the world, and China has not been spared. On the evening of January 30, 2020, the World Health Organization announced the COVID-19 epidemic as a public health emergency of international concern. Some countries evacuate their nationals from Wuhan and some suspend flights with China. The COVID-19 epidemic disaster has caused widespread concern among government and people around the world. Novel coronavirus has the characteristic of strong camouflage, long incubation period, high variability, and diverse transmission routes. Although vaccination work have been complete in China, it is still impossible to contain its outbreak in China in many cases. Since the world population of China started vaccination in early 2021, there have been many large and small outbreaks all over the country, including a most serious Shanghai outbreak at the beginning of 2022. It can be seen that the COVID-19 epidemic still has a huge negative impact on China. So, how big is the impact of the COVID-19 on China economy with the active role of the China's government?
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nohumaira and today I will present about the condition of unemployment and inflation of China. For unemployment, based on the graph, the unemployment rate of China from 2017 until 2021 has a significant changes occurred in the year 2019, which is an increase of 6.3%. The highest percentage is in the year 2019, following the year 2020 and 2021 as the second and third highest percentage, although not as high as 2019. The increase due to several factors, including the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on the economy. It also showed that in the year 2017 and 2018, the unemployment rate was both 5.2%. As for inflation, the inflation rate of China from 2017 until 2022 has shown that the inflation rate in China for producer prices from 2017 to 2019 show a relatively stable increase and decrease. The highest percentage was in the year 2021, but starting from 2022, producer prices began to fall again, but not so drastically and quite stable. The consumer prices from 2017 to 2019 were very stable but began to increase and reach the highest peak at the end of December 2019 at 5.3%. In the year 2020, the consumer prices began to bounce and show a decline that was not so noticeable at negative 0.3%.
Hi, my name is Noshaira. So the next one, I'm going to explain about the types of unemployment and inflation in China. In China, there are several types of unemployment, including cyclical unemployment. So what is cyclical unemployment? Cyclical unemployment is one of the primary causes of high unemployment in economies that are developing. It significantly affects China's rural migrant labor force. For instance, a decline in demand during COVID-19 epidemic financial crisis forced many migrant workers from countryside regions to return to their home areas. And as the economy recovered, an urban labor shortage developed. Other than that, frictional unemployment also is one of the types of unemployment that happen in China. Frictional unemployment can be described as an experience when people switch occupations or enter working life for the first time. When individuals are seeking for appropriate job opportunities, it is considered as a type of unemployment. This type of unemployment can be frequent in an economic environment such as China's, where the labor is heavily dynamic. The most common individuals who experience this type of unemployment are the young generation, such as fresh graduate students. And the last one is structural unemployment. Structural unemployment happens when there is a gap between the labor force qualifications and the skills that employers or the economic system require. Rapid economic growth and technology improvements in China have the potential to impact the demand for particular capabilities, resulting in structural unemployment for people lacking those skills. Although China's jobless rate has gradually declined since the pandemic's peak, there are still significant labor market problems due to a lack of qualified manufacturing workers. Okay, so the next one is the types of inflation that happened in China during COVID-19. In China, there are two types of inflation, which are demand pull inflation and also cost pull inflation. So what is demand pull inflation? Demand pull inflation can be described as the result of a surplus of demand over supply of goods and services. Global economies, especially China's, have been severely impacted by the COVID-19 epidemic. Although supply chain disruptions and lower demand were among the first effects of the epidemic on economic activity, there were later stages in which specific elements helped to cause demand pull inflation in China. During the epidemic, China's export industry proved resilient, capitalizing on rising demand worldwide for things like electronics, personal protective equipment, and other items related to the pandemic. There was a demand pull impact in some industries as a result of the rise in export demand, which also caused output and economic activity. As China managed to restrict the COVID-19 from spreading and progressively reopen its economy, the government utilized a variety of incentives to assist in economic recovery. And last but not least is the cost pull inflation. Cost pull inflation is the process through which rising production costs raise the general level of prices in an economy. During COVID-19, the epidemic had an impact on China's labor market dynamics. While certain industries experienced job losses and income reductions, there were cases where necessary workers and skilled labor were in high demand, resulting in rising wages in certain areas. Furthermore, during COVID-19, the business in China, like those abroad, were forced to implement health and safety precautions in order to avoid the spread of COVID-19.
Unemployment among aged 16 until 24 is refused the trend. In April increased to 20.4%, meanwhile before pandemic around 10% in April 2019. They also have less work experience. Number two, trade war with the US and the weak global demand. Based on government data, 442.47 million workers for previous year. However, 4.67 million workers have lost their work during COVID-19. For 2 months in year 2020, retail sales decreased by 20.5% on annual basis. However, for online shopping, increased 3%. Number 3, policy cause delay in the supply chain. China strained for zero COVID regulation to prevent COVID-19, but economy still slowing down more than 2 years. Truckers also been restricted by the strain testing and quarantine regulation. This will make longer time for cargo arrive at the China port. China also forced certain businesses to use bubble approach, like employees reside on the premise of the facilities where they work.
So next, I'll continue with the effects of unemployment and inflation. First one is China's GDP growth fell dramatically. Similar to other economies, China's GDP growth had a sharp decline at the start of the pandemic but rebounded by the end of 2020. China's real GDP growth in 2022 was just 3%, which was less than Beijing's aim of 5.5%. Particularly in light of China's absurd growth rates of investment and consumption in the final quarter of 2022, some analysts speculate that China's real GDP growth was lower or possibly negative. Second one is private sector investment is lagging. Without a rebound in investment, China's economy cannot fully revive. China's GDP growth last year was supported by an increase in investment, particularly in the fourth quarter. Last year, SOEs accounted for 38% of overall investment in terms of value, but 71% of investment increased year on year. Chinese private companies typically rely on retained earnings to finance investment because they have less access to financing overall. Unless they anticipate a recovery in the economy, they will not be making new investment. Last one is China's augmented general governmental debt. The most significant restriction on certain areas is their reduced capacity to borrow more money through local government finance vehicles for quasi-fiscal or off-balance sheet spending. LGFV in debt will have grown by 14% in 2022 to reach 57 trillion yuan or 8.3 trillion or 47% of GDP. According to Goldman Sachs estimate, the overall debt of the local government fund and vehicle was 60 trillion yuan or 8.7 trillion in 2022. First method of problem solving is boosting domestic demand through consumption. Considering the Chinese government is anticipating that reopening the economy after terminating zero COVID will do most of the job, Beijing's economic and fiscal targets for 2023 are prudent. Chinese officials declared in March at the National People's Congress that they intend to expand the real GDP by roughly 5% by 2023. Additionally, Beijing declared a quota for special local government bond issuance of 3.8 trillion yuan, which is just marginally more than that of 2022. The fiscal impulse, the change in the fiscal deficit, is low since Beijing is effectively seeking to keep its fiscal powder dry due to local debt limits, and they need to retain fiscal capacity for unforeseen shocks. The second method is new financial bodies. Other Chinese officials are attempting to reassure foreign investors that trade with China has resumed in full. Last year, they saw a decline in foreign direct investment and a net withdrawal of capital from Chinese markets by foreign investors. At 62 billion last year, private equity investment in Greater China decreased by 53% year over year. There is a growing lack of optimism regarding China as an investment destination, according to the American Chamber of Commerce annual China study.
China's economy is facing serious issues as a result COVID-19 pandemic, which is impact on both supply and demand side of the market. Lockdown may decrease in economic activity and increase in unemployment. It's also change in inflation due to decreased global demand and uncertainty generated by COVID-19.